A diplomatic thaw. US and Russia reopen channels. The recent talks in Riyadh signal a potential shift in US-Russia relations. Both countries agreed to restore full diplomatic relations. This includes the crucial step of appointing ambassadors to each other's capitals. This move indicates a willingness to engage in dialogue despite the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The resumption of diplomatic ties is an essential first step towards addressing the complex issues that have driven the two nations apart. The meeting, held in Saudi Arabia, was significant for its neutral setting. It provided a space for open dialogue away from the glare of the international media. While the talks did not produce any immediate breakthroughs, they did establish a foundation for future negotiations. Both sides agreed to continue discussions on a range of issues, including arms control and regional security. The decision to reopen diplomatic channels comes after months of heightened tensions. The war in Ukraine had brought relations to a historic low. The Biden administration had imposed severe sanctions on Russia, while Moscow responded with its own countermeasures. The reopening of embassies is a sign that both sides are willing to explore ways to manage their differences. It remains to be seen whether this diplomatic thaw will lead to a broader improvement in relations. The US and Russia still have fundamental disagreements on a range of issues. However, the resumption of diplomatic engagement offers a glimmer of hope that the two nuclear superpowers can find a way to coexist peacefully. Seeking the path to peace. A framework for Ukraine. The Riyadh talks also saw progress on the issue of Ukraine. The US and Russia agreed to a framework for peace talks. This framework includes regular consultations between the two countries on a potential settlement. The US has pledged to appoint a high-level negotiating team to engage with Russia on the issue. The framework addresses key issues, including territorial disputes and security guarantees for Ukraine. However, significant differences remain between the two sides on these matters. Russia continues to demand territorial concessions from Ukraine, while the US insists on Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The US has emphasized the need for a European-led security guarantee for Ukraine. This suggests a desire to see NATO play a role in ensuring Ukraine's security in the long term. However, Russia remains deeply opposed to any NATO expansion, viewing it as a threat to its own security. The framework for peace talks is just a first step. The road to a negotiated settlement in Ukraine remains long and arduous. However, the agreement represents a crucial starting point for dialogue and diplomacy. The international community will be watching closely to see if the US and Russia can translate this framework into meaningful progress towards peace. Security concerns, a clash of visions in Europe. At the heart of the US-Russia divide lies a fundamental disagreement over the future security architecture of Europe. The US advocates for a strong NATO presence in Eastern Europe, seeing it as a deterrent against Russian aggression. This stance has been further solidified by the conflict in Ukraine. Russia, on the other hand, views NATO expansion as a direct threat to its security. It sees the alliance's eastward movement as a betrayal of post-Cold War agreements. Moscow insists on a neutral buffer zone between Russia and NATO, encompassing Ukraine and other former Soviet republics. This clash of visions has fueled tensions between the two nuclear powers. The US has increased its military presence in Eastern Europe, providing support to NATO allies bordering Russia. Russia has responded with military exercises and deployments of its own, raising concerns about a potential miscalculation or escalation. The issue of security guarantees for Ukraine further complicates matters. The US has called for increased European defense spending and a European-led security arrangement for Ukraine. However, the details of such an arrangement remain unclear, and it is uncertain whether European nations are willing to commit the necessary resources and political will. Obstacles and opportunities, the road ahead. While the Riyadh talks offer a glimmer of hope, significant challenges remain. Russia continues to demand significant concessions from Ukraine, including territorial concessions and a change in government. These demands are unacceptable to Ukraine and its Western allies, making a negotiated settlement even more elusive. The potential for future geopolitical and economic cooperation also hangs in the balance. Both the US and Russia have expressed interest in exploring areas of mutual cooperation, but only if a peace agreement in Ukraine is reached. This linkage highlights the interconnectedness of the various issues at play. The absence of a set date for a meeting between Presidents Biden and Putin underscores the fragility of the current diplomatic opening. Such a meeting, if it were to occur, would carry immense symbolic weight and could potentially provide the political impetus needed to overcome some of the current obstacles. The concerns of Ukraine and the EU about their exclusion from the talks also cannot be ignored. While the US has assured both parties that they will be consulted, the lack of transparency surrounding the Riyadh talks has generated unease and suspicion. The road ahead remains uncertain. However, the resumption of diplomatic engagement between the US and Russia is a positive development that should not be underestimated. It offers a chance, however slim, to manage differences, reduce tensions, and work towards a more peaceful future. The international community must seize this opportunity and work collaboratively to build upon the progress made in Riyadh.